What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the Sixers Digest YouTube channel. My name is Barnard, as always. In today's video, I want to talk a little bit about an interesting new name that has entered the trade rumors conversation, originally brought up by Zach Lowe. So I want to discuss what I think of a potential fit of Lauri Markkanen on the Sixers, as well as discuss a little bit of topic about James Harden and his most recent comments on the Sixers and his exit and overall relationship with Daryl Morey there. I thought we were past the days of talking about James Harden, but just want to make a little mention of it. Now, let's dive in and begin with what we got from Zach Lowe here. So this is more Zach Lowe kind of speaking through and theorizing, not anything set in stone. But an interesting comment that he brought up is he said, a guy that I've been asked a lot about is what are the Jazz going to do with Lauri Markkanen? Execs wonder if he could be traded as Utah commits to the tank. Now, the Sixers were brought up as a potential team that could make sense. As things currently stand, the Jazz have a record of 7-13, sitting in 12th place in the West. They're kind of teetering on a dangerous area where they have a little bit too much talent to be in the rebuilding stage where they're collecting those top-end draft picks, but they're still a far cry from being a contending team. We know that they committed to the rebuild, to the tank, when they made the decision to trade Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, dating back 2 off seasons ago now. That is still the zone that they are in, and Lauri Markkanen is clearly the high point of that team. He's been tremendous since going to Utah. He's been very fun to watch, and there is a question of, is he a guy that they're going to build their team around moving forward, or is this a guy that you could potentially get some more return and then start to find your foundational pieces? So I want to talk a little bit about that, and let's just dive into exactly who Lauri Markkanen is. So I'm going to start off by pulling up his stats here, and as you can see, this season averaging 23.7 points per game, 8.7 rebounds, 1.1 assists, 1.1 steals, coming off an all-star season last year in his year 25 season. Last year he averaged 25.6 points per game, 8.6 rebounds, 1.9 assists. What jumps out to me the most about Lauri Markkanen is his impact from beyond the three-point arc. That a career 37.1% three-point shooter. Last year he shot 39.1% from beyond the arc. This year, shooting 38.3% from beyond the arc. And it is that volume that's incredibly intriguing to me. You can see 8.5 three-point attempts per game this season, 7.7 last year. That is some really high-level volume on really good efficiency. He's a big guy, has some really nice size. He's a true version of a stretch big. And that's kind of the conversation that I want to shift to. And this especially comes during the frustration of Tobias Harris. I don't want to rip the Band-Aid off and discuss it too heavily, but that second half against the Celtics is among the worst halves of basketball I've ever seen a professional basketball player have. Scoring 0 points on a night without Tyrese Maxey and without Joel Embiid is just straight up unacceptable for a guy who is the highest paid player in NBA history to never make an All-Star game. I don't want to pile on to Tobias. I know it's been tough. He's seen his role and his expectation shift more so than just about any player across the NBA during his time with the Sixers. There's been moments where he's been asked to step up and be the number 2 option, and moments where he's been reduced to essentially a 3-and-D catch-and-shoot guy, and now he finds himself sort of in the in-between. But the bottom line is he's not the answer for helping the Sixers team win a championship. We finally have the end in sight for that massive contract that he did sign. This is the final year of that deal. So that is something that I did want to bring up. And compared Tobias specifically to Lauri is where I kind of want to dive into things here. So as you can see, they're side by side. That Lauri is several years younger, a better scorer, better rebounder. That rebounding I do think is notable. That's still an area where I think the Sixers could use more help. You can see more efficient as a shooter. His effective field goal percentage is better for Lauri. There are things that Tobias is better at, a little bit better, a playmaker, a guy that does his work from inside the arc far more than Lauri, and that is why it is an appeal to me. That as we kind of begin to construct this Sixers roster, so we know that Joel Embiid is the ultimate franchise centerpiece, the guy that is the MVP of the league, one of the best talents across the entire NBA. Then there is Tyrese Maxey, who's this budding star, and really the ultimate, I guess, best case scenario of this James Harden trade is it still allowing you this timeline to continue evaluating how good is Tyrese Maxey, what is his future as a player, and what are the players that you need to surround him with to maximize his potential and the team's potential. Those are the questions that are looking to be answered. I think Lauri Markkanen is an answer to all of those things. And it is nice to have a little bit of a different name that we're talking about here. There's been so much talk about the Zach LaVines, the DeMar DeRozans, the OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakams. It's nice to be thinking outside the box a little bit with Lauri here. And as we designed this team with Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid, I took a little bit of heat reading in the comments from you guys about I really do believe Tyrese Maxey is ready to be a number 2. And I don't think people have caught on to just how good Tyrese Maxey is yet. He is the real deal. I'm not sure what more he could do to prove that to people. I'm not interested in bringing in a player that hops him in the pecking order for this Sixers team. That I want it to be known by everyone that the pecking order of the Sixers organization goes Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and then whatever that third star that they bring in. I think Nicholas Batum has been awesome as a connective piece. He's the perfect type of complementary player you want surrounding these guys, but they do need a guy that can still score, can still provide positive impact, but isn't stepping on the toes. And this isn't an area where I think Maxey is selfish or will get offended by that by any means, but I do think that in the context of basketball, there is a pecking order with an offense. That's how things work, that you do have set plays, you do have set runs for set guys. I want it to be known that Tyrese Maxey is the number 2 on this list. I think Lauri Markkanen is a great balance of a guy who is a high-level player, who I believe is absolutely an improvement over Tobias Harris, but he's not a guy that is going to need to get up this high volume of shots, that he's going to be comfortable as a floor spacer. He does have a better ability to put the ball on the floor and create his own shot than he gets credit for. He's a higher-level athlete than he gets credit for as well, does a really nice job when he attacks the basket, especially when he has this little baseline cut. Very good at that. I do like Lauri's game, and this shouldn't be any surprise. I've been writing positive things and speaking positively about Lauri Markkanen since he came in the league. In fact, I'll pull up this article here. I wrote this in 2021 when Lauri was still with the Bulls, talking about why the Sixers should trade for him and why I think he would be perfect next to Joel Embiid there. So this isn't a surprise that I am on this side of things. I do think Lauri's a guy that goes underrated in the conversation for how good that he is, that I think he's in that kind of even potentially like top 60 in the NBA mix when he reaches his peak as a player. That it's rare to find the skill set of a guy that can connect on such a high level on three-point shots with the size, with his rebounding ability. He's got some really niche areas of talent, and they are ones that the Sixers need. Now, I always like to bring up in these conversations the contract, because I do think that's very important in the context of a trade. In fact, in the NBA, with the CBA and the rules of salary matching and everything, that sometimes the contract plays as much of a role as the actual talent when getting a deal done. So to look at Lauri's contract here, we can see he's making $17.2 million this season. He has a partially guaranteed contract for $18 million next year. That is absolutely going to get picked up. That as is currently standing, only $6 million is guaranteed on the season, but he comes fully guaranteed the day after the 2024 NBA draft. For his talents, $18 million is absolutely fair, and frankly, his contract beyond that is going to be much more lucrative. That I do think this is a guy that is going to be flirting with the max contract market. I think he probably ends in the Tobias Harris kind of level where you're right near a max, but not quite at that number. As I mentioned, Tobias Harris, the highest paid player in NBA history to never make an All-Star game, and Lauri Markkanen also already has him beat there. That he does have one All-Star game under his belt. It would not surprise me if there are more of those coming in the future. It's interesting that I think he's currently in a place in Utah, and both the Jazz and Lauri are kind of figuring this out about themselves, where he's not good enough to be a number one option on a successful team. Now, is it the best case for Lauri that he wants to play on a winner, that he's content with kind of seeing some of his workload drawn in a little bit? And that does help players. That we've seen it in other situations where guys are asked to do too much on a team, then they go to a team where their role's a little bit reduced and they're able to just bring the best versions of their game. I don't think Lauri's looked overly exposed by being asked to do too much in Utah, but I do think it is not a direction that pertains to winning. So if he's willing to buy in, compete with a contender, I do think that's the best outlook for him. And for the Jazz, that I think they're also realizing that if Lauri's not going to be their number one or can't be moving forward, they need to find a guy that is. And if that isn't in a trade, that means getting more draft picks. That means sitting back and taking more swings at the apple to find out who that guy could be. They do have some nice young talent there that is already developing. Guys like Walker Kessler, Ochai Agbaji, they have some talented pieces, but not guys that I believe are the true building blocks for a successful contender in the way that I think that they are searching for at this point in time. So I do just want to put that out there, that I would be very much for a Lauri Markkanen trade. This isn't something that I see a ton of movement on or I expect to happen rapidly, but that would absolutely be worth a phone call from Daryl Morey to see. Now, speaking of Daryl Morey, I did want to touch on these comments from James Harden. He sat down with Sam Amick of The Athletic to give a little bit of an impact on, or a little bit of his side of the story for him leaving Philadelphia, and he did have some interesting quotes here. So this I just want to pull up. This was my favorite part of the article here. So this has kind of been danced around for several months, but it was interesting to see Harden just fully set it in stone. So Sam Amick asked him, quote, "So you mentioned the financial part, and I was hoping you could clarify one aspect of the situation. Were you actually told by the Sixers that you had that deal coming?" And James Harden asked, "A max?" "Yeah." And James Harden said, "Yeah." "That was said to you by Daryl?" "Yes." "Yes." "Then when did you start figuring out that it wouldn't be there?" I'd heard that he stopped communicating you with the summertime, and you took that as a sign that things had changed. And then James Harden says, quote, yeah, me and Daryl had a really good relationship. So in the past, a week or two after we lose in the playoffs, it would be all about trying to figure out how to improve the team. They'll talk about how do we get better? And that's been going on for 10 plus years, you know what I mean? And then this year, there was no communication. And at that point, it's like, okay, I see what's going on. I'm very intelligent. So he goes to shift gears and talk about how he kind of saw through the bluff that Daryl Morey and or the Sixers were taking, that they wanted to reach past the point of James Harden opting into his player option, his $36 million player option, then see what the free agent market was, realize it wasn't up to par, so there was not a legitimate option for him to jump teams and see the high-value contract that he desired. And then the Sixers are still in a place where they don't have to give him the max and can still give him the best offer on the market. It's a brilliant business move. It is not one that does great for player relations, and it is clear that Daryl Morey operating a little bit in the gray area as far as his words backing up his actions here, or his actions backing up his words is, I guess, a better way to put that. The bottom line to me, I'm happy this is over. There was also a ton of tampering kind of hinted at in there beyond just the Sixers. He spoke about having a meeting with the Rockets and Ime Udoka, which is straight up against the NBA rules, considering that he was never a free agent, that he never reached out of the Sixers, being a player under the Sixers, that he was still under contract, and even in that brief point before accepting the player option, he still had not hit free agency yet. So it is not legal for a player to take those quote-unquote free agent trips without being a free agent. So I'm interested in what the NBA looks at this. We know that they've had a fine eye on the Sixers and this entire situation. They've already been cleared of investigation twice for doing any wrongdoings, and frankly, I think it is hard to pin down that Daryl Morey specifically did anything wrong. You can say, no, it's not the most morally correct thing, but I also find it hard to believe that Daryl Morey straight up guaranteed a max contract. I do believe there was conversations along the line of, you keep taking care of business, you keep this level of play up, and we will take care of you. Comments like that, but we will take care of you, is a very vague statement, not something set in stone. I don't fully believe that James Harden said, are you giving me a max contract this summer? And Daryl Morey said, yes, I promise you we were. Could it have been interpreted that James Harden believed that's what Daryl Morey was saying? Absolutely. But I do find it hard to believe that Daryl Morey straight up said that to Harden word for word, or I guess clearly laying out numbers in a way that just did not happen. Regardless, the best case scenario for everyone is Daryl Morey, or James Harden is no longer with the organization, that the Sixers instead have this collection of assets and can now shift their focus to finding the other pieces like Lauri Markkanen, and that could be the difference for this team. The Clippers beginning to get their act together over there, the system in full swing, but we're only worried about these Sixers over here. That I am satisfied with the level of play that we've seen. We would not have seen this explosion from Tyrese Maxey if James Harden was still with the roster. We would not see some of these guys showing what they can truly do, this buy into the Nick Nurse system. There's a lot of good that can be taken from James Harden not being here any longer. It was worth a shot. It was good while he was here, but I think the organization is for the better. That situation is in the rear view. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think of Lauri Markkanen about a potential Sixers target. I personally would be all for it. I don't want to keep pumping the gas too hard until it looks like a more legitimate option, or he could be for sure available. But this is a name that I'm very excited by, and it's nice to be out of the norm of those same couple names that we've been talking about. So let me know if Lauri Markkanen, where that would rank on your list of Sixers trade targets, specifically when comparing them to guys like Zach LaVine, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, and the same guys that we have been talking about. So I want to hear from you guys in the comment. Please hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and I will talk with you next time right here on Sixers Digest.